Unions are not just top-down organizations. They cultivate working-class culture. They are primitive forms of working-class consciousness, directly working-class consciousness. And there is an immense level of grassroots pressure that is exerted from the bottom on the higher ranks of the union leadership. And that was what was driving the decision to go on strike. So make no mistake, these demands that you're seeing that the union is forwarding, including the 32-hour work week, and we're going to talk about that one as well, that came from the workers themselves. It would not have gotten to the levels of the negotiating table if there was not an immense level of pressure coming from the working class base itself. Let's be fucking clear about that. And so I want to explain, and I'm sure most of you already know this, but for those that don't, just to give expression, to explain, and to give appreciation to the gravity of the situation, what's at stake in this strike. We have about, I believe, 16,000 workers going on strike. A ton of them are being laid off. Why is this strike so important? Why is it worth so much of our support and encouragement? Why is this so fundamental to the situation, or more than anything else? I'll tell you why. Because it's not just about the union. This is about the battle of general labor, labor as a whole, versus the bosses, versus the capitalists, versus the owner class. And these guys are sending a message to all of American labor. Now, this is why we have privileged the significance of the industrial working class. They claim that we did so because all the industrial workers aren't gay. Well, no, that you're putting the cart before the horse. The reason why we say that is the core of the working class, it doesn't mean that the guy who works at Taco Bell isn't a member, isn't working class. It means that Taco Bell workers cannot represent the working class as a whole, but the auto workers can, and there's a reason why. Because they represent the institutional power of labor in this country. Starbucks workers will never be able to represent labor as a whole. They will only represent the petty bourgeois aspirations of a segment. And this is why we've assumed the position we have. Make no mistake, the leverage of these workers is so immense, they have the power to shut down the entire country. And they might just get laid off, you say. Well, we're going to watch some clips. I'm going to show you some of the things that these capitalists have been saying out in the open about the situation of labor in this country. But this is a zeitgeist moment. Americans across the board are finding themselves overworked. They're finding themselves unable to keep up with the runaway inflation of basic goods. They can no longer afford to pay their basic bills. They're missing rent in mass numbers. They can't even pay for their own homes anymore. And Americans are suffering big time right now. So for the organized power of the working class, in whatever limited extent, to defiantly challenge the bloodsuckers and the capitalists in this way is absolutely groundbreaking and has decisive importance for everything about U.S. politics is about this. It's always about labor. Joe Biden, Trump, doesn't matter. It's always about how to deal with the class antagonism, the class war, how to rein in labor. Even when the Federal Reserve, talks about whether they're going to raise interest rates or lower, it's always about the question of, should labor be disciplined? What's the unemployment rate? This is what is fun. This is what is the backbone of this country, and you'd know it if you were a historical materialist, and if you understood that the class war is materially primary before anything else. These are the real relations of production that underlie all of politics. So what is the significance of MAGA here? Now, Trump is acting like a fucking idiot. He is such an arrogant retard. It's not because he's condemning the strike, because that's not what's going on. The media is spinning his words to make it seem like he's against the strike. At least so far, that's not what's going on. What Trump is doing is even more profoundly stupid. And this is what MAGA communism is for. We need to exert pressure on the MAGA movement and on the Trump campaign in particular to whatever limited extent we can. Because Trump is going about this in a stupid fucking way. Trump's message to the auto workers. I'll give it to you here. Now, this is a headline from The Hill. And The Hill is trying to make it seem as though Biden is defending the workers against Trump. That's not what's going on. But they're going to actually tell us what the real dynamic is. So, here's the thing. The union hasn't endorsed Biden for 2024. And why? Because the White House is focusing on electric vehicles. And which is obviously going to cut into the sources of income for these workers. And I'm going to explain that to you, because people might go, Haas, you're against transitioning to electric vehicles? Isn't China doing that? What about China? And explain to you guys what class struggle is and why you should not resort to opportunism and pretending like we're a socialist country when we're in the middle of a class war. But before I get into that, here is what Trump said. Stand strong against Biden's vicious attack on American labor and on American auto workers. And if you want more jobs, higher wages, and soaring pensions, vote for Trump and have your leaders endorse me. If they don't, drop out of the union and start a new one that's going to protect your interests right. I don't think this is a smart strategy at all. And I'm not experienced union organizing, but I do not think this is a smart strategy at all as far as Trump is concerned. He's acting like an arrogant idiot. Trump, you can't just barge in and demand fealty. You need to support the union. And if you support the union, that will be enough to exert the necessary pressure on the leadership, because the members of the union are going to see, hey, President Trump is supporting us and he's endorsing us. Why aren't our lead? You know what I mean? So Trump is going about this the completely fucking wrong way. If Trump wants the union to support him, he needs to first show loyalty to the workers, not the reverse. But he's an arrogant idiot, and he's saying this, and it's not good for him. It's not a good thing for the MAGA movement either. This is the unique opportunity for Trump, and I say this as someone who's not even a Trump supporter per se, but this is the unique opportunity for Trump. Trump has been ditched by the Republican GOP swamp monsters. He has a great opportunity to build a new solid base in the working class with which to conduct his war against the establishment and against Biden and the Democrats. I just don't know if he's brave or smart enough to do it. But this is just my words of advice, I guess. I'm not holding out and waiting for him to do this. And if Trump comes out against the strike, make no mistake, if Trump comes out against the strike, I will be the first to condemn Trump and call him a bitch. I'll be the first to do it. Make no mistake, my loyalty is always with the working class. Always. You understand? Always. Now, this is an argument that we're seeing, and I want to take the opportunity to respond to it. So he says, why would I want to support a bunch of lazy fat people? And I'm guessing this is what the America First people think. And this is why America First has no future in this country. They have no future. Because you can say this on the internet and get away with it. But when it comes to building a political movement that's going to seize power, you'll never... Look, the right wing believes this. They've always believed it. But the right wing learned they can't say things like this because they'll have a population completely hostile to them. That's why, for example, Adolf Hitler had to pretend he was pro-worker. Hitler also thought the workers were a bunch of fat, lazy people, and he hated them. That's why he had to create the National Socialist German Workers' Party and make it seem like he was pro-worker, because even he, the epitome of being an anti-worker, had to bow before the might and power of the working class and pay lip service to them, because they are the real power behind all politics, right? In any case, calling them a bunch of lazy fat people, it's just, I'm not a white guy. I'm not like, some guy living in the boonies, although I do interact with people from that background consistently, like all the time. And I'm always around those areas. I live in the Midwest, and I see these people. I see what the auto workers look like. I go to the towns that they live in. I go to the restaurants they eat in. I do all the things they do for fun, pretty much. I'm I'm in touch with this demographic, is what I'm trying to say. Where does this demographic come from? Is this just like East Coast, Ellis Island intellectuals or something from Ivy League schools or something? Like, how can you fucking say this? How can you claim to be an American nationalist or American patriot? Like, what group are you basing yourself in? What class? Because it's definitely not the working class. It's definitely not the majority of the white people, so I don't know what it is. Is it just Silicon Valley tech coders who are hiding that they're alt-right neo-Nazis or so? I don't know, I don't know where this comes from. The working class is the foundation of this country. It's the backbone of this country. It's the salt of the earth of this country. It's the basis of this country. Not just in a sense of their labor keeps the country moving, but in the sense of demographically and sociologically and culturally, the working class is in the closest proximity with where American culture comes from. Music, all the things we enjoy and cherish. That's the people it comes from, right? The working class of all races, by the way. So it is for the white working class. Also it is for the black working class. They are the foundation of everything. They are the ones that all corporations have to target to sell their products. They're the ones who set all the trends, the ones that are spontaneous at least. They're the ones that are the subject of American politics. It's about them. It's about no one else. It's not about fucking tech coders in Silicon Valley. It's not about Harvard academics. It's not about journalists. It's not about people who work in offices. It's about the working man. That's the foundation of the post-war American state as we know it since the New Deal. That's the foundation. Okay? So let me just address the argument, though, overall. They say the patriotic youth in China are working 70 hours a week to provide for their needs. And then I'm going to bundle also in the argument, Haas, are you against electric vehicles as well? And here's the difference between us and China. China is what you call a proletarian dictatorship. And now, if you're an anarchist libtard, you might think that's a cynical description, because it's not like, people who work in factories in China are directly the ones making all the decisions. Although they kind of are. If you look at the composition of the Communist Party, it's kind of packed with those kinds of people. But in any case, no, the difference is China is what you call a socialist economy. And that means the people in power in China make sure and take a holistic consideration of all of the needs of the Chinese people at the individual, the familial, the local, and the holistic national level. So they balance these different interests. And it's a holistic consideration for the sake of the social harmony of all of China. Now, why do I say holistic? Because in America, for example, you may work 70 hours, but are you taken care of? Does anyone take into consideration the needs that might correspond to that kind of extensive kind of work? Because, for example, Americans right now, they're overworked, working multiple jobs, and they can't even fucking go to the grocery store and afford basic shit. That wouldn't fly in China. For example, in China, if the price of watermelons somehow spiked overnight, people would be on the street, and there'd be a lot of pressure on the government to make it right. They're like, holy shit, we can't, this is not making sense. This is not a harmonious situation. This is like, doesn't make sense, right? If China had a housing crisis like we do, where there's so many homeless and people can't afford to pay the bills on their homes, and they're getting foreclosed, and they have to take about all these fucking jobs to just pay, of course they wouldn't let that fucking fly. So China takes care of its people. So it doesn't matter if they work 70 hours. It doesn't matter if they work 200 hours. Because however many hours that they work, they live under a proletarian dictatorship where they are taken care of, where their working needs are taken into consideration, and you don't have a situation where young Chinese girls are forced or pressured to go fucking do OnlyFans just to be able to fucking afford rent. You see the difference? That's what a proletarian dictatorship means. It means the first thing they take into consideration is the welfare of the Chinese people, and the Chinese working class in particular. Everything else is just secondary. All the prosperity and markets and profits they make, that's only a layer on top of that primary thing. And all those other things serve that primary purpose, actually. Likewise, the same is true for electric vehicles. Yes, if you live in a socialist country with a proletarian dictatorship, yeah, electric vehicles would not be bad. But that's not what we live in here in America. We live in a country defined by class war. Our government doesn't serve the holistic interests of the American people. So if the government wants to introduce electric cars, of course we should support the organized working class in opposing and resisting this. Not because we don't want to live in a country with electric cars, but because we are not living in a socialist country. We are not here to pretend like we're responsible for the welfare of the American economy when there is no holistic common interest that the government represents. It's a class war. So EVs, they undermine the power of the organized working class, And that's all that. It's a power game. It's about power. The power of the working class versus the owner class. So even if hypothetically you're saying, well, I don't want to live in America where we have a 32-hour work week. That's an absurd argument, first of all. But let's shelve that for a second. Let's shelve that. Even if you think that in your ideal America, we should be working 80 hours a week, even if you think that, you justifying your opposition to the strike on that basis is bullshit opportunism. Why is that? Because whatever reason you're giving for why you think we should work this much or that much is because you're probably trying to make the argument that this is what's for the common good of the country, right? But the common good is not what is in command right now. Profits are. So until the common good is in command, shut the fuck up about what you want in your ideal America and focus on the war that is at hand. Imagine you're fighting a war. Let's say World War I or World War II. And you're like, well, I don't want to live in a Europe with a bunch of rubble and buildings that are destroyed. But it's like, well, you can clear the rubble later. You have to win the war first, right? They're like, well, I'm against winning this war because the wartime production. No, you win at all costs first. Then you can have whatever ideal nonsense you want. The fact of the matter, this guy is making it seem like he's justifying the rape of America is what he's doing. He's like, you're justifying American decline. We need excellence, not laziness. But even if that was your position, and it was a legitimate position, whatever it means, the corporations that are opposing the workers on this strike are not striving for American excellence. They're striving for profit, and not even their own profit necessarily, the profit of the banksters that control them. So it's like, what is that? You're making it seem like we're living in a socialist country where your sense of the common good is somehow in command, and it's not. Do you guys understand what I'm getting at here? The demand for a 32-hour work week is an assertion of power by the organized working class. They're arm wrestling capital right now. This is what Lenin teaches you and the communists of the past teach you. They're arm wrestling. It's about power. It's not about the demand itself. It's about who has the most leverage, labor or capital. So even if they said we want the right to literally moon the fucking the managers at work, they want the right to stand up and take a piss where there's, it doesn't matter what their demand is. You understand? What matters is whether that demand is conducive to the power of an organized working class and reaffirms their leverage. So this is complete opportunism to oppose the strike on the grounds of, well, I don't think this is good for America. Well, fuck off. Nobody cares what you think is good for America, because America's not even good for itself right now. You understand? I don't think the strike is good for America. Well, I don't think it's good for America that we're being controlled and everything we fucking own, everything we have is actually owned by a tiny minority of blood-sucking fucking parasites. I don't think that's good. I don't think it's good for America that all of our natural resources and industries are completely owned by a tiny minority of elites who hate the majority of people who live here. I don't think that's good. You know what I don't think is good for America? You want to know what I think is American decline? That people can't even fucking put bread on the table anymore in increasing numbers. People can't pay their fucking bills despite working so many hours and taking on so many different jobs. I think that's an example of American decline. Now, the final nail in the coffin, I talk about this, is that this is not even true. In China, people are working for Huawei and the IT sector. They're doing the 996 work culture. But a lot of that has to do with patriotism, because China has a 5-year plan, and the work that they're doing is, even if it's indirectly, is ultimately for the common good of China. It's not for the bottom line of BlackRock or some other bankster elite. It's for the good of the Chinese. So of course they want to enthusiastically work their asses off, right? But that's for the IT sector. Even companies like Huawei are employee owned, by the way. So it's a completely different scenario. It's a different situation. Now, what do I think about the demand for 32 hours? Is that unreasonable? Yeah, I think it is, because I think what we need is an 18-hour work week. I think we should do 18 hours. You know, that's what I think is reasonable, because you have to be a fucking idiot to think that these menial, grueling jobs should take up 40 hours of your week in America. With the level of productive forces and technology we have, that's a bunch of gibber nonsense. And I don't think people should just sit around all day, but I think people should be free to pursue new kinds of entrepreneurial activity based on free association. I think we'd be much more innovative and productive and better off. Yeah, let's work at the factory for 18 hours a week. And then in all of our spare time, let's make smartphones and be enthusiastic tech entrepreneurs, or let's be artists, or let's be something else, whatever. That'd make our country way better. But 32 hours is more than reasonable. And you know what's beautiful about the 32-hour demand is that if they're successful with it, holy fuck. That is just strengthening the leverage of labor. That the fucking guy at Taco Bell is going to demand 32 hours. You see why it's important to actually center the actual industrial working class? Because even if they get what they want, then the McDonald's worker has better leverage to get 32 hours. But the Starbucks union doesn't have that effect. The Starbucks union is craft unionism, and they isolate themselves from the rest of labor, and everyone eats shit, and they're just the privileged tech workers in Silicon Valley or whatever, right? Similar to them and all the benefits they have. Also, yeah, like I said about China, even those guys working in the IT sector with 70-hour work weeks, they're taken care of, dude. I mean, their company's covered, everything's covered. Everything's covered. They've got everything taken care of. You know, it's not like they don't have homes and they can't afford but no, they have a whole way of life that's taken care of for them when they're working for these companies, you know? Totally different situation. China has different needs than the U.S. does right now. Moreover, who's not to say that China isn't going to reduce its work week? Who's not to say they won't? They may. They may consider it to be in their best interest to do that. It's none of our fucking business. Invoking China is complete opportunism. You know, this is what the Republicans are going to say, by the way. They're going to go, oh, this strike is just benefiting China. This strike is just benefiting China at America's expense. You know what? Good. Good. Benefiting China, you mean not at America's expense, but at the expense of the fucking capitalist ruling class. So we have to get on our knees for mammon and for capital, because in a roundabout way, that trickles down. And actually, it's better. No, fuck that. I was going to live as a slave, having to serve the fucking whims of some fucking fat pedophile 80-year-old guy on a yacht who fucks children. Fuck you. Listen. In the long term, that Jeffrey Epstein pedophile guy on a yacht, You need to give him what he wants. Give him what he wants and we'll be better off. Get him what he wants and at the grocery store, but get him what he wants. No, fuck that. Right wing is crazy. They're like, we're dissidents. We're fighting the status quo. Oh, but not when it comes to the corporations. We love them. We love the capitalist corporations. We love Wall Street. We love the profits of all these fucking monopoly automakers. This is what MAGA communism is about. We want to support these strikes and we want to politicize them as soon as possible. No, we don't even have to prove this. It just will happen. It just will happen. Okay? It's going to happen. We already see it coming. We already see the rifts that are there, right? This strike will possibly create a national crisis. And I think this will be the most decisive moment, perhaps in American history, maybe. Not in all American history, but since Trump's departure. This will be the most decisive moment in the history of the Biden administration. That's what I mean to say. Not all of American history. It's a little much, right? But it will nonetheless be decisive. And I'm going to tell you what it is. The Democrats will do what they did with the railway strike. This is a national emergency. It's creating a crisis. And you're going to see a huge political realignment happen around the strike. The Democrats are basically you're going to see America First, Joe Biden, Richard Spencer, the Democrat Party, and the GOP mainstream, they're all going to hold hands. And maybe Trump too, if he's a fucking bitch. And they're all going to hold hands and say, this strike is a danger to American national security. We need to invoke fascist powers to crush it. And they're all going to pretend like we forget that. I will declare war on Donald Trump if I see him join together with the establishment in opposing this strike. I will declare war on him. And you have my promise. You have my promise in that regard. MAGA communism is about the working class. If Trump makes such a direct move against the working class, because, listen, before he could be excused, because that was the GOP. But if he, at this point in his political career, where he's severed from the GOP, and he still comes out, I will declare war on him. I will declare war on him alongside the rest of the political establishment. I am not loyal to Trump, I'm loyal to the working class. I already see the Democrats coming to crush this strike. Just like they did the railway strike. So the workers are going to be politically stranded. Trump is the only person who's supposed to represent them at that point. And if he doesn't fucking do that, fuck him. If this strike is not properly politicized, and by politicized I mean, if the establishment and Trump want to just silently pretend that this is, we're just going to brush it under the rug and go back to our team sports politics, we are going to make this strike the foundation of whatever we do politically going forward. And we're going to say fuck you to everyone in 2024 running for president. And we'll just go from scratch directly from the working class. And we will build our political party and movement from the workers themselves, from the labor movement.